Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is, of course, Charles Q. Banks, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Charles' Anime Episode Summary and Review. And today I am talking about Kimetsu no Yaiba, Episode 3. And I also wanted to do a little bit of a retrospective on the last episode I did, which I thought was very well done. But at the same time, as it really well captured my negative feelings on the subject, almost effortlessly, I didn't really get across my positive feelings on the show or what episode 2 did right. And this is basically what the show will be getting right for me if it continues to do so, that I will be very happy with if I continue to do the show. And also, I wanted to continue doing episode 3 because I'm not one of those Anitubers who watches maybe one or half an episode of a show and thinks, oh, the entire show is bad because the first 5 minutes was bad. Like some I could name. Did you, bro? I had something in my throat just now. But, so, I think that there is a measure of good faith that is shown by watching more than one episode of a show, and maybe even more than two. Because there are a lot of anime shows that actually do get better through the watching of it, even if it's just you getting used to the way the show is, which I still haven't really gotten that yet because the show keeps changing every episode. The first episode was very dark and slow-moving. The second episode was really lighthearted and silly and crazy, and now we're on to the third episode, and I'll tell you what I like about the entire show and what I dislike about the entire show in this episode, and maybe even continue for the relevance this show has on pop culture, anime, pop culture in general, as well as what this show has to say about the shonen genre as well, because it's also a traditional, a pretty authentic traditional Japanese myth that reinterprets the shonen genre, reinterprets the mythological genre at the same time, blending those two together in a way that I haven't really seen before, and that might be good, might be bad, but remains to be seen. I think I'll keep watching this show until it becomes unbearable, but I will definitely give it a shot even past this episode, because I believe in human nature. I believe there's a reason for everyone to like what they like, and I want to get down to the bottom of that. So here we go. Episode 3. So it starts out pretty promisingly enough, kind of artistically done. A very short pre-opening scene with our boy Tanjiro writing a letter to Nazeko with a brush in the dark morning hours before the sun comes up with candlelight, and he goes in to see his sister after he writes, and he looks in on her, and she is asleep. Totally dead to the world. And then Tengu walks behind him and says, "Let us go." And that's when the episode begins. They go out into the light. And the rest of the show, the rest of this episode, is a training episode. Lots of montages, and something I liked about both this episode and the last episode is definitely the fact that it has become more and more shonen-like. I mean, I would like it, I would prefer it, probably, if it went in a darker, more adult direction, being more seinen themed or seinen influenced than shonen, but the way it's going, with the lighthearted feelings, the comedy, is enjoyable. I do like the very light colors contrasted with the darkness. I think that's a very important thing that anime does very well. I don't know about this show, though. The shifts between dark and comedic are so strange and not very well integrated yet, but maybe they will be. So this episode continues with that trope, with the cliches of which, a cliche might be good or might be bad, but the cliched trope of Tanjiro training as a swordsman under the Tengu fellow, because I cannot remember the rest of his name, continues in this episode with him training under waterfalls, training to breathe correctly, training to use a katana correctly. And I can't really speak to the reality of how katanas are used, but generally speaking, you want to defend with the flat end of the blade and not the thin end, not the sharp edge, because you don't want to chip the sharp edge. But Tanjiro is being told to use only the sharp edge, especially when attacking, which is very true, but that's just one of my little nitpicks. So moving on, those sorts of things are continuously happening. There's a lot to it. Tanjiro is just narrating over all of the montages with his own journal entries that he is writing to his sister. So we are hearing those journal entries directly to the audience being read. And the strange thing is that occurred to me as I was watching is what is Nazeko doing? Like, one would expect, and I expected, I assumed that she was just asleep because that's when it's daytime. It's daytime when the sun is out, and so to avoid the sun, she is just sleeping during the day. That's what I assumed. I did not assume that anything was amiss. Halfway through the episode, once it is revealed that Tanjiro has been growing better and better at the katana, it is revealed that she has been in a coma for 1 year. For an entire year. She has not woken up since they made it to Tengu's house and to the mountain where they started training. She's just been out for the count, and at that moment, at the halfway point, they say that they have, Tanjiro reflects on the memories of having the doctor over, and the doctor couldn't say anything as to what was causing her coma. This is unbelievable to me. The priority of the show is obviously on him training to become a demon slayer, and not on the health of the sister. One would expect, and this is how I would have written the show, that the sister would be prioritized first. It would be shown that not only is she in a coma, but Tanjiro and Tengu, who both care about her very deeply, would get the doctors in. That would be the first scene, is them being kind of freaked out that she's not waking up, Nazeko, wake up! And then she's not able to wake up, and then they're like, what is this? Is this a curse? We have no idea. And then them just deciding, we must, become stronger in order to fight demons, in order to find a way to cure Nazeko. But that doesn't happen. It's just stated that she's in a coma after a full year, and that they don't know what is causing it, and that Tanjiro just has to get stronger and to join the Demon Corps. And so that's very off-putting to me. The priority of Nazeko is seemingly lower on the list than him getting to become a demon slayer. And I said that in the last episode too, just retreading ground. But it's very clear, at least this episode kind of gives the implication that Nazeko is basically just a living MacGuffin, that she is just the reason for Tanjiro to move forward. She is the springboard off of which he flings himself in order to become something more. If he didn't have his sister, he would have no reason really to become a demon slayer, unless they made it a vengeance story and she was dead and left, for dead, and he just went off to gain vengeance and to discover who killed his family. But these motivations are very just implied and in the background, and Nazeko is just sleeping. And, I want to see Nazeko more. She's an adorable character. I want to see how she deals with life, with being a demon. How does she feel about all of this? We got a very short scene in which she expressed emotion at being a demon and at wanting to eat her brother. But ever since then, we haven't really gotten a window into her mind or into her as a character. There's no development for her yet, which is kind of a problem for me. I want there to be an even keel of character development for all of the characters, not just Tanjiro. So, what happens in this episode? Tanjiro becomes super powerful, especially because Tengu employed deadly means to train him as a swordsman, meaning that he used what I would call live rounds, throwing real knives at him, having real spikes at the bottom of pitfalls at a certain point when he judged him to be more able to overcome them. Of course, the possibility that Tanjiro could just be skewered by the pikes and just be outright killed are extremely high when you do this. When Tengu employs these deadly traps, Tengu could kill Tanjiro, and that would be the end of the story, and that would, him getting a successor to his line, because that's part of what Tengu-sama wants, would just be gone. That whole motivation would be ended. The goal would be over. Even if Tanjiro were to have a limb chopped off, which is just as likely, that would end his career as a swordsman. So it's not appropriate in training. Let me just tell you that. Of course, this is old mythology, and the point is that all of the training is really intense and really fierce, and it is used comedically. Like, Tanjiro is just, happy, light music is going on in the background, and Tanjiro is reacting to all of the knives and things being thrust at him, and like, wah, wah, ah, and it's like, this is serious, dude. Tengu, are you a sociopath? But, we've seen this in many other shonen shows, and it's no more appropriate here than in the other ones. Of course, if Tengu is just a really murderous sociopathic trainer who just will make the best swordsman no matter what, then that would definitely justify what's going on here. So, due to that, he becomes a better swordsman, but then Tengu says, after a year's time of training under him, I have nothing more to teach you. You must learn yourself how to become a better man. And in order to do so, there is one thing left that you must do. To split this boulder in half with your katana. And, which, again, seems counterproductive, because you have a katana, and it's already established that a katana is kind of brittle, especially on the broad end, and he's telling him to just whack away at the boulder. That sword is going to get dull very, very quickly. And if the point is that katanas are so sharp as to be able to cut through boulders, then you want to be able to know how to cut through boulders before cutting through one, and to be able to sharpen your blade, and do it again. Like, he's going to be dulling his blade through the entire time that he's training against it, and it's shown through many, many takes, many, montages that he continuously strikes his sword against the boulder, which should dull it every single time he hits it. But nevertheless, that is just a point of realism that has nothing to do with this show. This show doesn't care about realism or logic, and I need to get over that. But all that being said, the animation holds up quite nicely. It's still very, very clean, very crisp, very colorful. I like it. I really do. There's just one thing caught my eye, and I have to say it. There was a moment when he's training on the edge of a waterfall with Tengu, and Tengu is kicking him and punching him, and he just falls right off the waterfall. And then there's the comedic, looking down the waterfall at his body floating in the water beneath. And it's a 3D composition, and it's a composite shot of traditionally animated Tanjiro floating in a 3D water. And it looks really weird, like he's floating at a different rate than the water is flowing, and I thought that looked really funny. But nevertheless, that was a very quick scene. So, moving on. So, at the beginning of this episode, speaking of the Demon Slayer Corps, Tengu started talking about the specifics and explaining the specifics of the Demon Corps. That it is indeed a secret organization that the government does not even know about. And they have been keeping it a secret that there is a secret organization of Demon Slayers throughout time. For their entire existence, even the existence of demons is doubted because they themselves keep it hidden. I have to ask why that is the case, but again, as is usual with this show, they tend to tell explanations of things way after the thing has passed, and that's exactly what's happening here. We're getting explanation as to why people aren't aware of demons 3 episodes in, which is very annoying to someone like me. Maybe it won't have, done so for you. So that at least gives a slight explanation as to what was going on in episode 1. So Tanjiro continues to train against the boulder, and it's shown that 6 more months have passed. 6! Again, that's a very mythological thing to do. Just give you a huge amount of time to tell you that a character has been training, so that you'll believe that the outcomes are actually more realistic. And especially to put it in such terms as, at 6 months' time, this happened. 6 months later, this happened. 6 months later, this happened. It's a very old, ancient Japanese and even Chinese, Asian mythological way of doing things. Even in Grimm's fairy tales, that happens a lot. So that's definitely a mythological trope that they are using in this anime. So, anyway, so he trains for another 6 months, and he is not making any headway against the boulder. Because, obviously, he has to transcend something in order to become so powerful as to cut a boulder with a sword. And so he starts banging his rock-like head against it, and I thought that he was going to split the rock with his head, which would have been funny, but it wouldn't have been with his sword, so obviously it wouldn't make much sense for him to do that. But it was close. That thought flitted through my head, and I thought, oh, that would be a kind of a cool way to do it. But anyway, nevertheless, he starts getting depressed, and he's made no headway for apparently 6 months, and his sister is still in a coma. Heck, I would be depressed too, man, especially if we had no way of knowing why she was in a coma. And especially if you're just going off on your own doing this demon-slaying business without tending to your sister as much. Nevertheless, a character shows up on top of the boulder wearing a fox mask, red hair, fox mask, and he also has a wooden katana, and he approaches him, challenges him, and says, you need to become a man. You should stop being, pitying yourself and despairing. What have you learned? Have you not learned anything, you fool? Etc. And he challenges him to a duel, and Tanjiro is still his empathetic, weaselly little self, obviously, and they fight, and, his name is Sabito, which, is important. Sabito continues to provoke him until he, can possibly break out of his unwillingness to fight, and they get into a very quick, fast fight. It made me think of a fighting style in Guilty Gear, which is an anime-styled fighting game, which has particularly nice graphics, especially because of its anime style. And it looks a lot like that, like very clean, crisp, and very showy, but at the same time minimalistic, which I really like, Of course, it's going by so fast that you can't really tell what the actual choreography is. And to a certain extent, it doesn't really matter. What really truly matters is how much emotion is being put into each blow, which is definitely coming across. So I like that about this show, that it has very strong fight choreography, even though it's going by really fast. Obviously, Sabito defeats him with a rap on the head with the butt end of his wooden katana, and then when Tanjiro wakes up, he's introduced to Mamoko, who is this tiny, adorable little Japanese girl in pink dress. She has another fox mask with flowers on the side, and she is telling him and training him, telling him how to defeat Sabito, and encouraging him to do so. So another 6 months passes of him learning a special technique which Mamoko teaches him that Tengu kind of alluded to, which was the total control breathing technique. And this is something else very ridiculous but mythological. This technique of breathing is so intense, so concentrated, that it allows the oxygen to fill your blood. And when your blood is going faster and faster and is filling up with more and more oxygen, It allows you to become as strong as a demon. Okay? And demons have superpowers. They are extremely strong and are able to Hulk out. So this means that a human, which all of the demon slayers are humans, they do not have mystical powers like the demons, using this ability, using this skill, they can become as strong as demons, which kind of, goes against the whole idea that Tengu tried to get across at the beginning of the show, that all of the demon slayers are human and cannot heal themselves. At least that's true, but, the demon slayers are now super-powered swordsmen. And that's what is going to be, I guess, the rest of the show, is each of these characters learning to utilize mythological sword techniques that, even though they're human, they can still utilize. And maybe it's even magic, who knows? It's very spiritual. It kind of reminds one of Qigong, and the sort of powers used in a lot of other shonen, especially Hunter x Hunter, having to do with breathing and concentration. So that's interesting. We'll see how powerful Tanjiro is able to get through this breathing technique. But finally, after another 6 months, so now it's 2 full years since he started training with Tengu, he is now fighting Sabito again, and they are both using real katanas. And so this is the real deal. It's going to be a fast fight, and it's going to be one hit, if anything. And that's what he has learned, to be speedy and to have one hit. That's what he has learned, to be fast and deadly, and to keep battles to a minimum. Because if you are poorly equipped, if you are weak, then the battle will last longer. If you are strong, the battle need only take 1 moment. And which is, very, very dramatic. I love that. So then they fight, quote unquote. They speed towards each other, time has to slow down, and Tanjiro wins. He finally hits Sabito in the face with his katana, but it, of course, only goes through his mask, cuts the mask in two, and we're able to see the beautiful, beautiful boy underneath, redhead, with... This is a funny little detail, but both Mamoko and Sabito have these white pupils, which, again, is, like I said in the previous episodes, when characters have off-color pupils, no pupils, or brightly colored pupils, it really gives you an impression of otherworldliness, or that they have been hurt by life in a way that has glazed them over, so to speak. So these characters, there's something supernatural about them. They just showed up out of nowhere and accosted our boy Tanjiro. And so when you see Sabito's face, you see that his eyes are white, but he has, thin, wide eye pupils, like a goat. So he looks like a goat face. Anyway, I thought that was kind of... He does have a scar on his face, which matches the scar on the mask, and I don't know if these characters will show up again. I hope they do, because we need them to explain what happens next. And what happens next is a mist rises and covers everything. And Tanjiro has grown like a full head of hair. He's a real boy now. And so he's watching through the mist, and they are both disappeared. And it is revealed that the boulder is cloven in two. And so that whole fight, he wasn't fighting Sabito, per se. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But he clove the boulder in two when he thought he clove Sabito's mask in two. Okay, alright, okay. I don't know what's going on. And the show doesn't tell us, because that's when the ending starts. And I'm just like, what? Tell me, were they ghosts? Was it a hallucination? Something interesting that kind of gives the illusion, or at least clues us in to the kind of dreamlike quality of what happened with Tanjiro, is he hits his head against the boulder, then he sees the character attack him, and maybe it was all just an illusion of his own, but how did he learn the total control technique if that was the case? I don't know. But then they both disappear, and he was clove the boulder in two. But Sabito said at the beginning of their fight that he himself had cloven the boulder in two before with a katana. But the boulder is sitting there, not in two. So why is it there still if he cut it into himself? There's something fishy going on here, something spiritual, something metaphorical, and I don't know what it is. I don't get it, guys. Is it just a metaphor of his learning how to... Oh, I have no idea. Did he come up with it out of his own imagination, these two characters? Or were they actually ghosts who put the boulder back together magically? Or was it a different boulder? But he says it's the same boulder, so what's going on there? It's just very, very fuzzy. This whole show is a very fuzzy experience. And that may be interesting to some of you, but, you know, I wish I'd known beforehand that this would be basically a fairy tale with fuzzy logic, because none of this is making any sense, and even in a lot of other shonen, like One Piece, for example, there are tons of supernatural and sci-fi fantasy elements, but every time something strange happens, there is a character there who is able to react to it. And that's where you get the good old reaction side characters, where they do nothing but react to everything that happens. But there's a reason for that, and that's that the audience can't always make out why something is happening. And to have people reacting realistically gives realism, an added amount of realism to the actual show. And like in One Piece, when people see like a person turning into a cloud and billowing away, people generally, their jaws drop and they're like, what just happened? That was amazing. What did he do? How did he do it? And it may not make a whole lot of scientific sense, but at least these things get explained because there are characters asking questions. With Tanjiro, he's not even asking questions. He didn't ask questions of Tengu, and now there's this ghostly pair that we haven't seen before, and who knows if we'll see them again. But, you know, I liked the idea. I just wish they would have capped it off with a strong reason for these things to be happening. But I was just left with, dang it, I'll never know. That's because this show probably will never address it. But yeah, like I said, this show has that thing where it does something weird, doesn't explain it, and then 3 episodes later, it'll come back and kind of explain itself a little bit. But so that's very annoying to me. But so yeah, this episode definitely was, again, totally different than the last two. It definitely did go in that shonen protagonist route of the montage, which was both funny and harrowing, you know, for him. Was very interesting. I like the two characters, Sabito and Mamoko, but who are they? Why did they show up? How did they show up? And will we see them again? Because there's no explanation as to who they are or where they came from, there's no real indication that they will show up again. So it's just like, I'm still confused out the wazoo and left with kind of a negative impression. But I hope this show gets even better, because it didn't really get any better, it didn't get any worse, it just kind of plateaued. You know, we're leading up to something. This is the training arc. Like I said in the last episode, it'll probably lead to another arc, probably like a tournament arc soon, and we'll see how that goes. So let me know what you think of this show in the comments below, and this episode, and what I said about it, and what your reactions are. And until next time, thanks for watching. Click that like, subscribe, and bell buttons, and I'll see you in the next one. Farewell!